Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we're tackling a transition that I think it gives a lot of parents, mild palpitations.
That moment.
Yeah, that specific moment when your child finishes the relative freedom and playfulness of pre-primary or kindergarten,
Right?
and suddenly they're staring down the barrel of year one.
The big school shift.
Yeah, exactly. The big school shift, and there's this collective anxiety that just hovers over it. You hear it at pickup, you see it at orientation. Everyone's wondering, is the fun over?
Is it all desks and silence now?
Are we already behind if my kid isn't reading chapter books?
It is a really common worry. It feels
Mhm.
like the stakes just suddenly shoot up.
Yeah.
You go from, I don't know, finger painting to standardized testing, or at least that's the fear.
Right, that's the fear. That childhood is ending and work is beginning.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to just cut through that noise. We are, for a bit, ignoring the parenting forums, the WhatsApp groups.
Yeah.
And we're looking strictly at the stack of research papers, curriculum frameworks, and pediatric reports you've brought to the table. We want to find out what actually works for 5, 6, and 7-year-olds.
And I think the headline here, right up top, is that we need to destroy a binary.
Okay.
It is not play versus academics.
But that's usually how it's framed, isn't it? Like hard work versus fun time.
It is, but the evidence, it really points to something called a hybrid curriculum or a balanced pedagogy. That's the sweet spot.
Balanced pedagogy. Okay, that sounds reasonable, but we need to see what the mechanics of that actually look like.
Of course.
And I just want to reassure everyone listening, this isn't about critiquing your school, and it's definitely not about adding pressure to do more at home.
No, not at all.
It's about understanding the mechanics of how these little brains actually learn.
Precisely. It's the how and the why behind the classroom door.
So let's start with that shift itself. Is it a cliff we're pushing them off, or is it a bridge?
It is definitely designed as a bridge. If you look at the source material, it describes year one as a year of consolidation and application.
Consolidation and application. That's a crucial phrase.
It is. It's not a year of high-pressure mastery where they need to know everything on day one.
That sounds so much less scary than, assessment and testing.
Right. The biggest shift from pre-primary to year one is actually structure, not necessarily difficulty.
Okay, what does that distinction mean in practice? Because structure can sound a lot like sit down, be quiet, and fold your hands.
Well, in pre-primary, learning is very fluid, right? In year one, it becomes more intentional.
Intentional.
But intentional doesn't mean we reject everything that came before. It's not about tossing out the toys for textbooks. It's about how those tools are used. The environment might look similar, but the goals are more specific.
You mentioned this hybrid concept. I was looking at one of the studies you brought from an international journal.
Yeah, educator survey.
Yes. It said something like 88.4% of educators use play-based approaches, but, and this is the key, they integrate them with literacy and numeracy.
Exactly. That is the hybrid model in action. The goal is to balance child-led discovery with purposeful instruction.
So it's not one or the other.
The research shows you absolutely need both to really unlock that developmental potential.
So if I walk into a year one classroom, I shouldn't be shocked if I still see, blocks, dress-up corners, sand
And
tables.
actually be relieved.
Yeah.
Because those are the tools. If you remove them, you're removing the primary way a 6-year-old processes information. But there is another layer to this transition that I think is even more important than the academic content.
Okay, which is...
Well, one of the documents calls them learning-to-learn skills.
I love that. Unpack that for us, because we usually focus on the ABCs and the 123s.
Right. This is the how. Essentially, the research suggests the most critical skills for entering year one aren't reading fluency or writing perfect sentences. It's things like listening to a short instruction.
Like 1 or 2 steps.
Exactly. Staying with a task for 5 to 10 minutes.
5 to 10 minutes. That's the benchmark.
That is the developmental expectation. We often expect 20 or 30 minutes of focus, but the brain just isn't there yet. And here's the big one. Tolerating mistakes.
Oh, that is huge. I feel like that's a life skill, not just a year one skill.
It is. The ability to recover from frustration is arguably a more valuable year one skill than perfect handwriting.
Wow.
Because if a child falls apart every time they get something wrong, they can't engage with the learning.
That is such a relief to hear. I feel like we spend so much time worrying about phonics, but knowing how to take a breath when you draw the letter B backwards is actually the win.
Absolutely. It's about building the engine before you try to drive the car fast. If the emotional regulation isn't there, the academic car isn't going anywhere.
Okay, so play isn't gone, we're building resilience.
Mhm.
But there is a term that gets thrown around that sounds a bit rigid, explicit teaching.
Mm.
Let's demystify that, because to me, that sounds like a lecture.
It's a great question because explicit teaching gets some bad PR. People hear it and think of a teacher at a chalkboard barking orders.
Right, the Ferris Bueller's teacher vibe. Open your textbooks to page 45.
Exactly. In a year one context, that is not what it means.
Mhm.
Explicit teaching is really about making the learning goals visible and clear.
So it removes the guessing game.
Yes, it's just about intentionality. The teacher saying, here is exactly what we're trying to learn right now, instead of just hoping the child stumbles on it.
Okay.
One of the sources calls it a decision-making framework. The teacher is constantly deciding, okay, for this concept, do I need to explain it directly, or model it, or let them explore it?
So it's not just letting kids run wild, but it's also not lecturing them for an hour.
Correct. Sometimes explicit teaching looks like the teacher on the carpet with a big book, pointing to a word and saying, this is a full stop. It tells us to take a breath.
I see. That's explicit.
That's explicit teaching.
And a huge part of this involves repetition and practice. But we need to understand why that matters for a year one brain.
Right. This connects back to how young children learn. We have to remember their executive functions, attention, memory, impulse control, are all still developing.
So the learning path isn't a straight line.
No, it's not linear at all. I think that's something parents struggle with. We want to see steady progress, right? A, then B, then C.
Of course.
But the research describes it more as long periods of practice followed by sudden bursts of development.
So the plateau is normal.
The plateau is necessary. It's where the consolidation happens. And this is where the idea of depth over coverage comes in. The sources are so clear that exploring fewer topics deeply is better than rushing.
Can you give us an example of what repetition with purpose looks like? Because just writing the number 5 50 times sounds miserable.
And that would be bad practice. That's rote drilling. Repetition with purpose means revisiting the same concept in different contexts. So let's see the math pattern, red, blue, red, blue.
Okay, physical, tactile.
First, you might bill it with blocks. Then, maybe the class claps it out with sounds. Loud, soft, loud, soft. Then finally, you might draw it on paper.
So it's the same concept, but the brain is coming at it from 3 different angles.
That's it. It's not repetition without purpose, it's revisiting. It builds a robust network in the brain, not just a single weak memory pathway.
Okay, that makes so much sense. And it leads us right to the other side of that hybrid coin, guided play.
Yes.
This feels like the loophole. It's play, but it's work.
It's one of the most misunderstood concepts, I think. The pediatric research was so strong on this. It doesn't just say play is nice to have. It says it builds the pro-social brain.
And it went further. There was that quote saying, play is to the 21st century what work was to industrialization.
Wow. That is a heavy hitter statement.
It really is. It frames play as a utility, not a leisure activity.
And it is. Play is the mechanism for learning skills like problem solving, collaboration, impulse control. But we do need to distinguish between unstructured play and guided play.
Okay, so unstructured is recess. Go run around, don't hate anyone.
Exactly. Which is valuable, but guided play is where the heavy academic lifting happens. This is where an adult scaffolds the learning.
Scaffolding. That's from Vygotsky, right? The zone of proximal development.
It is the idea that a child can do something with help that they couldn't do alone.
Yeah.
In guided play, the adult creates a setup, maybe a grocery store corner, and then nudges the learning.
So you're not telling them how to play shop,
No.
but you might intervene.
You might ask, how much does that apple cost? Or, I only have $5, and this costs $3. Do I have enough?
So you're injecting math into the narrative of their play.
Exactly. That interaction is called sustained shared thinking. It's when an adult and child solve a problem together inside the play. It elevates it.
And it works. The research you brought showed that guided play produces superior language and math results compared to just free play or just strict instruction.
Yes, it beats both extremes. It's the best of both worlds.
I like the analogy of being a tour guide versus a bus driver.
Oh, I like that.
A bus driver just takes you there, opens the door, and says, get out. But a tour guide walks with you, points things out, asks you what you see.
But you're still doing the walking.
Exactly.
That is a perfect analogy for year one teaching. The teacher is the tour guide.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty. What does this actually look like for the big two? Literacy and numeracy. Because I think parents hear guided play and worry their kid won't actually learn to read.
It's a fair concern. For literacy, the biggest takeaway from the research is that oral language is the strongest predictor of reading success.
Talking.
Talking, listening, conversation.
Right.
Learning happens through conversation, not just worksheets.
So if I'm worried about my year one kids reading, just having rich back and forth conversations with them
Yeah.
that's an intervention.
It's a powerful one. Can they tell you a story? Can they explain what happened at lunch? But then, of course, you have the mechanics. The curriculum talks about phonics and segmentation.
Break that down. What is segmentation?
It's the ability to break a word apart into its sounds. So not just looking at the word spoon and memorizing its shape, but hearing S-P-U-N
Spoon. 4 distinct sounds.
and then blending it back together.
Mhm.
Or manipulating it, changing the C in cat to a B for bat. This is often done playfully, with clapping or magnets, long before it's done with a pencil.
So if you see your kid clapping out syllables, they're actually doing heavy literacy work.
Exactly. They are building the auditory architecture that reading will sit on top of.
Okay, so that's literacy. What about numeracy? I feel like math has changed so much.
It has. The focus has shifted from just rote counting to something called number sense,
Meaning?
meaning it's not just about reciting numbers to 100 like a poem. It's about understanding quantity, knowing that 5 is bigger than 3.
Mhm.
So the curriculum emphasizes manipulatives, physical materials,
Yeah.
blocks, coins, counters.
I've seen this. Why is moving physical stuff around so important? Why can't they just use the numbers?
Because abstract symbols like the number 5 on a page don't mean anything to a brain that hasn't experienced what 5 looks like. One key concept here is partitioning.
Partitioning.
Seeing that the number 10 isn't just a solid thing, it can be made of a 5 and a 5, or a 7 and a 3. You build that with blocks first,
And that sets them up for addition and subtraction later.
and eventually algebra. It's about understanding that numbers are flexible. If you just memorize 7 plus 3, 10, you don't really know why. If you break a stick of 10 blocks, you see it.
And what about that other term? Subitizing.
Subitizing, yes, it sounds like a medical procedure.
It does. I'm sorry, you have a bad case of subitizing.
It's actually a visual skill. It's looking at a group of objects like dots on a dice and knowing how many there are without counting 1, 2, 3.
Ah, instant recognition.
Yes. You see a 5 on a dice, you don't count the dots, you just know that's 5. That is a foundational math skill.
And the recommendation is to use everyday language for this.
Right. At the dinner table, comparing the length of a spoon and a fork. Or saying, I have 3 carrots, you have 2, how many altogether? That is year 1 math.
I love that. You don't need a degree in calculus to compare forks.
Not at all.
Let's move to our last big section. We touched on this, but I want to go deeper. Social emotional learning. The research seems to say this isn't just fluff, it's academic.
It is fundamental to academics. We go back to that pediatric source on executive functions. Planning, controlling impulses, remembering instructions. These are the predictors of adult success, more so than IQ in many studies.
And play is the gym where they work out these skills.
Exactly. Play is the primary way they practice. I mean, think about a simple game of tag.
Okay.
You have to remember the rules. You have to control your impulse to run out of bounds.
Yeah.
You have to negotiate if you were tagged. You have to handle the frustration of being caught.
That is a huge amount of brain processing for a 30-second sprint.
It is. And if you remove that play, you remove the practice ground for those skills.
This leads to assessment, because parents want to know how their kid is doing. But the curriculum notes say assessment in year 1 is often observation-based.
Yes, and this is a big shift for parents.
So just because a worksheet doesn't come home with a grade on it.
Doesn't mean learning isn't being measured.
Yeah.
Teachers are constantly watching.
Yeah.
They're watching how children negotiate, how they solve a problem when the blocks fall over, how they communicate. That data is often more valuable than a test score at this age.
That is really reassuring. It feels like we're looking at the whole child, not just a data point.
That is the goal of the modern evidence-based approach. We're building a learner, not just filling a bucket with facts.
So let's wrap this up. If we had to summarize what actually works in year 1, it seems like we have 3 pillars.
Right. Pillar 1, explicit teaching. But remembering that this means clear, short, intentional instruction, not lectures.
Pillar 2, practice, but prioritizing depth over speed, revisiting concepts in new ways.
Giving the brain time to wire itself. And pillar 3, guided play. The engine that drives engagement and builds those crucial executive functions.
Where the teacher is the tour guide, not the bus driver.
Exactly.
And the big message for parents here is that year 1 is a transition. It's a bridge.
Yes. Children do not need to be fluent readers on day 1. If they are, great. But if they aren't, the curriculum is designed to get them there. The goal is to keep them curious and confident.
I want to leave everyone with a thought from that pediatric source that really stuck with me. We often view play and learning as opposites. Stop playing and do your work.
But in the brain of a 6-year-old, they're the same mechanism.
Exactly. If we remove the joy to focus on the work, we might actually be breaking the very tool they use to learn the work.
That's a powerful thought to hold on to. We can't demand the output if we destroy the input mechanism.
Something to think about the next time you see them building a Lego tower instead of practicing their spelling words. Maybe they're doing both. Thanks for diving in with us.
A pleasure.
See you next time.